down with the music behind the music. You will be inspired to think higher, realize your gifts. Join the music and Michelle and Gina. Turn this up and through your speakers. It's the music.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Muses of Music, the Muses Behind the Music, and your host, Michelle Fallon. I am here with my friend. So glad I can say you are my friend. CEO of Washington Performing Arts, Miss Jenny Bilfield.
Hi, Michelle. It's great to be with you.
It is great to have you. I've been excited about this all day long. Isn't it silly? Like all day long, whenever I'm coming to interview people, I get like really stoked. Like super stoked about it. But there's so many things that I want to talk about. Let me take care of housekeeping first. So if you are watching us on YouTube, Facebook, subscribe, hit like, love, share, all of the wonderful things so that this conversation can go out. And I just need your support. We need your support. And I am just excited to like jump right in. I see those hearts coming in. Bless you for those hearts. Keep pouring in, please. Hearts with the love. And if you have questions, we have the live chat. So please feel free to drop in your questions and I will be sure to take a look at it. And Jenny, yeah, as well, you know, browse through and whatever you grab at. Let me first say that Jenny Bilfield's resume is so extensive, you all. I was just telling her a second ago, I had things so outlined that I wanted to share and I messed it up. Y'all understand about me and technology, but we're going to make this through because I need to read some of this information. It's just amazing. Again, she is the president and CEO of the Washington Performing Arts organization, a premier arts organization presenter in the country. And she is a multidisciplinary arts presenter. That's important because it's not just in music, it's in all facets, all genres of the performing arts. I was so happy when you came to the DMV, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. She was conferred by President Obama to receive the coveted National Medal of Arts. I remember when you did, and that to me was just, it was so significant for so many reasons that hopefully we'll get to jump in there and talk a little bit about that as well too. Boozy and Hamilton and Hawks, I'm sorry, Boozy and Hawks, music publisher. I mean, Jenny, like there's so many things. She's coming from Stanford as one of their executive directors. That's how we received her here in the DMV, coming out of Stanford. She was distinguished by more than 25 commissions and innumerable collaborations with faculty, students, and regional partners. President of the North American, I want to say that for Boozy and Hawk, president of the North American division of this international music publication. There are just a multiplicity of awards and accolades that represent you. And I have not done it's sufficient justice, but I want people to know just how transformative I really think that you are. You are by far one of my favorite muses in my life. When you came onto the scene, it was something to have a woman in there, an intelligent woman, a forward-thinking, innovative, creative woman represent such an organization and to be in the DMV. So, my first question to you is, what really drew you to come all the way from California to be on the East Coast?
Gosh, well, first of all, I want to just say that knowing you and working with you has been one of the greatest pleasures. I adore you as a friend and personally, but also watching you in rehearsal, in performance as an artist yourself as a singer and leading Children of the Gospel, and as a thinker and collaborator, you really, truly inspire me. And I draw energy from creative people. And whenever we're together, I feel energized and hopeful and optimistic. And that has been it from day one. So I'm glad we can have this conversation.
Thank you.
So, I wasn't looking to run an arts presenter. When I was at Stanford, we had just built a concert hall. I loved the programming that I was doing, but being part of a really big institution means that things move a bit more slowly because there are so many different layers to manage. We built the concert hall. It was one of the great experiences of my lifetime. And as I started to just sort of dip my toe and begin to imagine what might be around, a colleague who had known me for a really long time called me and said, she was doing the search for Washington Performing Arts. And she said, they have this, really amazing chairman, Reggie Van Lee, who is a visionary. He is the chair that everyone wants to work with. The arts education program is robust. And actually that's what the National Medal of Arts was for the education programs that had long been, in existence before I got here. And, you should just take a look at it. And I looked at the website. I had remembered the tremendous innovation of Patrick Hayes and Doug Wheeler as a true visionary, but I had lost a little bit of touch with the organization the intervening years. And as I sat down to look at it, and my husband and I were talking, I started discovering all of these different layers. Oh my gosh, the arts education program is for real. It's not just, sitting kids in an assembly style thing and having them watch, but it was actually, hands on instruments, voices, trained, bodies in motion in the public schools. And I kept going through the embassy adoption program, all these great international collaborations in DC. And then we were sitting side by side in his teeny tiny overheated studio. He's a composer, as you know, in Palo Alto. And I decided that I was going to jump into it and throw my hat in the ring. And I came to a point where, I just kept discovering more things that I loved. And I said, oh my God, they have gospel choirs. And he said, you really want to do this, don't you? And I said, yes. I mean, that's been kind of our signal to each other, is there's something that kind of pushes me over the edge. And, I, as a young composer, I sort of absorbed so many different types of music. My mother was really the proponent of it. She loved music. We lived on Long Island. We went into the city every weekend. I started playing the piano when I was 3. And she really wanted to expose me to as much as possible, and used to sing me all sorts of, she'd sing me spirituals. We'd play Stravinsky. I mean, I just had all of the stuff all the music that she loved was in my head. So she took me to what I called, concerts at churches. I didn't realize that they were part of a worship ceremony, because everything for me was oriented to a concert. And I heard gospel music, and it really tuned my ears to the harmony, the vocal and historical sort of moorings. And I found myself also as a publisher thinking about how we could serve really different audiences and parts of our field other than just the classical music mainstream that we were focused on. So it's gospel music has been a thread through my life. And it was really that tipped me over the edge in coming to Washington Performing Arts.
I love that. So, I told you that I was going to share a story that you didn't know about before. This was the very first time I met you, and I didn't know who you were. I was hearing about you, but I'm horrible with names, faces. Wonderful. I will remember your face. So we were Children of the Gospel. We were at some performance, and you came along to check it out. It might have been at the White House.
The White House, yeah.
It might have been when I first met you.
Yeah.
And somebody might have introduced me. I don't remember the introduction. It might have just been you introduced and just saying, hi, I'm Jenny Bilfield. And I kept going around saying into myself, who is this woman? Like, what is she doing here? Like, I'm like, literally, because everything was very, you can't have but somebody, so I couldn't think. Right. Kathy, who is she gives me, Kathy, the name, right? Tell me, and she was like, Michelle. she is the new CEO. I was like, oh, oh, that's who it is. Hey, Jenny. But you were just so personable. And it was like you had known me for forever. It wasn't any kind of, there wasn't a stush, as I would put it, kind of feel. And no, seriously, I have received that on different levels from different people who have their titles. I mean, did you see your bio? You know, and just very down to earth. And when I heard that you were in love with the gospel programs, that to me was important because, you know, anywhere in leadership, when you're in an organization, you want to know that the lead really has a love and will help to promote and to push and to encourage and to pour into that very program. So I'm super excited that
I love that.
That it was you who did it. You know, Jenny, you have transformed the look of the arts in the DMV. Was that a part of your plan? I mean, did you walk in here saying, you know, I see the way that the arts world is in the DMV, and I want to come and shake it up a little bit. I want to bring a little something new and creative to it.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of built to ask a lot of questions and to seek collaboration. But I also, having moved from New York to California years ago, I was also aware that, you know, people come into jobs and they make all sorts of pronouncements, and there's a measure in that of disrespect for the history, you know, because it's like, well, I have this idea, but it's a New York idea or it's a California idea. And I found that a number of people would come from New York to California and kind of bring the New York thing with them instead of sort of sitting down and saying, okay, what are the unique qualities of this community and this environment that I can bring out, so that it isn't a question of molding everything to some particular standard or region or model, but actually finding the unique qualities and character and more ways to bring that out and make it more and to engage more people around it. Because I found too that having lived in New York and traveled all over the country, there was so much extraordinary work that was being done, but somehow there was this gravitational pull to New York. Like New York was, if it could happen in New York, it could happen anywhere. Well, you know what? It doesn't have to happen in New York. It can be incredible basically anywhere. But there is this mindset of, you know, comparison and whatnot. So when I first came, what I did recognize was that there were extraordinary parts of Washington performing arts that had been undernourished. And I felt that the gospel program and a number of other programs, Embassy Adoption, so on, needed to have greater visibility within our series. And that there was an opportunity to hear even more music and see more artists from very varied backgrounds, and to begin to track some of the unusual sort of cultural styles and, frankly, the international piece of Washington, D.C. through the main stage programs. So I saw that as an opportunity to bring greater visibility to those, you know, gems within Washington performing arts. I also saw a huge opportunity for collaboration, and that's something that very much something I've modeled in New York, bringing together, you know, Carnegie Hall, Brooklyn Academy of Music, and Lincoln Center for their first collaboration ever, which was shocking to me, but nonetheless, somebody had to do it.
Yeah.
And then in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, we have this illusion that we're all competing with each other. And, you know, in some ways we do. Competition is good, it's healthy. But in this region, we have so many overlapping audiences. People come to our performances, they support, you know, local organizations, theater companies, dance companies, schools, churches. So the sense of kind of proprietary behavior around patrons, I think, is really mistaken. We can be so much stronger when we work together, and frankly, the creativity of people working together can enable so many more ideas to flourish and in turn reach more people. So that's something I definitely brought that was a pretty significant shift, was a sense of, okay, you know, I don't know, let's just go and ask them, you know, why can't we actually create a program with the Kennedy Center? You know, they might be 40 times our size budget wise, but you know, you can always just ask. and I'm gonna pick up the phone, show up at the door, let's build a relationship and see what happens kind of person. And I'm not intimidated by
I love it.
by the size or the power I've gotten beyond that.
I love that. There's this scripture in the Bible that says, "You have not because you ask not."
Mm.
And so, what's the worst that somebody is going to do? Say no? Okay.
Right.
So then that just means I need to get in the door throughout another way. Let me take a different path. And that's one of the things that I admire so much about you. When you're a woman in this field, first of all, how many arts presenters do we have over major organizations? Do you know that females are running
Right.
this? So very few. And so when you are and you have the notoriety that you do in this kind of position, there have been some, I would say, as an onlooker, some controversial moves that you might have had to make, i.e., when you rebranded
Mm-hmm.
Washington Performing Arts. I mean, your Patrick just mentioned that. Patrick didn't know that I had that written down. Patrick, you're on my wavelength. Get off. But when you had to come to that kind of space, what drew you to that?
Well, actually, I sort of tested that particular thing out during my interview process, because as I was thinking about it, the word society is a very freighted word.
Mm-hmm.
When the organization was started, it meant something very inclusive and connective. Over time, it has become a very freighted and exclusive word. And so as I tried to reconcile that against the programs and the stated mission, I sort of randomly rewrote a mission statement, and I took out the word society. I just said, let's just see if they notice, the board members who were interviewing me. So I said Washington Performing Arts, just to try it out. And someone said, notice that you removed the word society. Was that an accident or intentional? And so I raised this question, and I said, I'm curious about the appetite for the organization to question some of this, because and it's not a question of abandoning something, but recognizing that organizations need different types of leadership at different times. They need different types of looks, and the ability to have this kind of elasticity to evolve is really important. So I suggested to the board, and the other thing was that when I came on board, many people pulled me to the side and said, "So what do you think about the name? WPAS with, journalists, board members,
Mm-hmm.
members." And so at my first board meeting, I said, you all have to know that like 70% of you have asked me what I think about the name.
Wow.
So rather than do it around the fringes, let's make it a process. Let's bring in a branding consultant to take us through the process and see what emerges. And there was some bracing feedback. And there was also energy around more clearly depicting who we were, name change or not, and imagining the audiences we might want to attract and how they would respond to our look and feel. So, I'm very interested in this sort of process of considering how we scaffold change, and this organization has done it well. I mean, historically has done it well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you are holding the mantle quite well, and the torch is burning, and you are next level representation of doing these things and making changes. We are in a climate that is quite different. I mean, we're seeing some similarities, but they're showing up differently because now we have video,
Right.
And it's coming directly in our face. So we're seeing, levels of injustice that might even seem to be a lot harsher or stronger in its representation because we're able to view it. And I can only imagine, and I know that there are some other decisions that you have to make in this kind of climate.
Mm-hmm.
To and you've done it with such grace too. I remember when the George Floyd incident, and actually it was before that, Trayvon Martin, and you wanted to sit down with us, the African Americans that were represented in your organization, not based on this, hey, I'm trying to make sure I put a Band-Aid on this, but really it was from this space of wanting to understand and seeing what the organization could do as a whole to speak to what was happening internally, not just externally, let's put on a performance, but internally too. How do I do it? And you've had sensitivity trainings, you've had, different initiatives that have been birthed out of this. So my question to you though, in all of that you were facing, is there something that you can share with us that you wouldn't mind sharing, another level of a tough decision that you were able to push through? I mean, there were some things in my mind I could think of, but I don't want to call anything out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find that I have to occupy the place of, myself as an individual and as an institutional leader. And hopefully when we find ourselves in these positions of ourselves and leading an institution, that there isn't emotional and intellectual dissonance. I've rarely been in a position where, and I wouldn't take a leadership position if I didn't feel that I could authentically, from the perspective of a moral compass, lead the organization from a place of values and mission. So in seeing these injustices, through cameras, through the emotions of friends, and recognizing that as a white person, I don't want to be a tourist, just sort of, drop in and explore and discuss and then retreat. There was I did a lot of soul searching about where my voice and the institutional voice affect, so that it didn't feel like a fleeting gesture, but something that actually fundamentally rearranged the DNA a bit, so that we were more representative, that we held to a level of accountability and honesty in the process. And I don't think that I realized, once you open the door, what comes tumbling out in many, many different ways. And that's something I'm grateful that people trusted enough to give honest feedback. And I think that, the statements that I made within the organization and that I crafted on behalf of Washington Performing Arts were very specific. They weren't just, violence is bad and racism is, they were very specific about the aggression, the systemic racism, and the things that we wanted to lean against and push. And my instinct is always to run at problems instead of retreat from them. I received a lot of wonderful feedback from people saying, thank you for taking such a specific and pointed position. I also received, some hate email from people.
Wow.
That, it's not the place of an arts organization to have a voice in this. I'm not going to subscribe. I'm not going to give. And I thought, well, okay, for every one person who decides not to support, there will be a couple of people who do. And, we never know who is coming to our performances. I've observed so much compassion and engagement, but I can't presume that, every person who supports our artists is aligned with our values. I'm grateful where they show up. And however, this was, I often use the phrase that has been, intoned before, centuries before, if not us, who, if not now, when. So what organization other than Washington Performing Arts, which was founded, within a spirit of inclusivity, Patrick Hayes and Todd Duncan desegregated DC theaters. I mean, this is part of our lineage. And what kind of leader would I be if I didn't have a voice on behalf of our community and organization at such a pivotal moment? It's easy to look back and say, well, of course, that they were on the right side of history. And standing in history, and how do you want to be remembered, and what is important, and how do you build awareness and humility when you learn and discover and engage. So it's been an interesting process, and not everybody in our organization is is comfortable sort of in those. But I figure, well, so is there anything in these statements or anything in these actions or these artists that we've chosen that's going to come back? What is the worst that could happen? Someone says they're not moved by it or they disagree. Okay, it was an hour of somebody's time at a concert. These are not, we have to keep doing it. And actually, one thing that you did so here's your story. A couple of years ago, when you put together Stay Woke, Still Woke,
right,
Children of the Gospel, we had reached out to Blacks in Wax, Cora Masters Barry's organization we've collaborated with many times, and asked if they had any students who might be prepared with a monologue to deliver at that concert. And there were two options, and one of them was Colin Kaepernick. And I thought, okay, this is going to be really interesting because he had taken a very forceful stand or kneel, and there was blowback and there was celebration. And I thought, this is who the students have chosen. They chose that individual to be, and I didn't tell anyone. People knew within the organization, but we didn't include it in the press release. And this young man appeared on stage and did his monologue during the performance. And I swear to you, my hands were sweating because I thought, please let this be the audience that I think that it is. And I know there were a lot of, families and board members and patrons in the audience, complete quiet. Yes. And it erupted. And I thought, you know what? We did something by trusting the students, trusting the leadership, trusting the art, and people brought their compassionate selves. And, this is a series of little wins. Like, okay, the people will understand, they will support, they might struggle, they might question, but we have to take these chances and trust the art and trust the people. And that's what I continue to learn on a daily basis. But I have those moments with my hands sweating, thinking, please let this not come back to bite me, or if it bites me, at least let it not draw blood.
Yeah. And it's funny, Jenny, because my saying is, God, whatever happens in my fall, when I do fall, allow me to get back up, that it doesn't take me out. It doesn't, take me out. But I know that I'm going to fall down. And that's what I love about, Jenny, building relationship in this business is so key. What you do is key. And the reason that things flow so well is because we trust you. We really do. And you have taken the time to nurture and to develop relationships with people. Oftentimes I look at you and I'm wondering, how does she do all of this? It's like there's this constant, you have to be on. Mm-hmm. There's this constant need to know that you have to be personable. And there's not a moment that I have seen you, and I can't read your mind, but there's not a moment that I have seen you that I have said, oh, wow, she's fake, or she's tired, or there's not a moment. It has always just been so authentic. Earlier, you and I were talking about, this pandemic and, so many things organizationally have changed. We had to become adjusted to it. And one of the things was, your movement. But now that the world and the country is starting to reopen, what does that mean for you? And what does that mean for the organization? Do you plan on holding on to some of these golden nuggets that we have really learned out of the pandemic and balancing that? How are you planning on finding balance with next moves?
Sure. Well, first, just to sort of address the kind of, and I'm grateful that you feel that level of trust, because more than anything else, that's the most important thing to me, is that people trust, yes, and extend grace and, provide me with feedback. I mean, it's that means the world to me. I love being surrounded by people, and there's not, it's not a, it's not a chore. I mean, I really love seeing people, being with people.
Yeah.
The ideas come from collaboration and conversation, not from, sitting in a dark room and just sort of contemplating. So this exchange, the connections that we all have, really fuel me. And that's what I'm most excited about in the arts. The relationships come because the work is meaningful and it's shared, and we cheer, and it's a triumph. There's another saying, which is never let a good crisis, or never let a crisis go to waste. And somebody said that to me years ago. Like, it might have been, I don't know, during anthrax, during 9/11, during, one economic downturn or another. And, I think very often that if you can work from a place of calm and emotional sort of reserve, and think about what you might do differently if you had the opportunity, and to sort of access some of those ideas, then a lot of great things can come from that. And that's really what happened with this. There's not a single time that I could remember in history where one organization, let's say, would go off and radically reinvent the performance experience the way we all had to. Like, if this were 2 years ago and Washington Performing Arts said, well, I think we'll just do a digital season, we won't have any live concerts, there would have been case studies written about the misstep and the idiocy. And I've seen Facebook, what, all sorts of words. And
right.
We like to criticize. We like to be editors, but we don't like to be writers. That's that has an opinion about somebody else, but they don't reinvent themselves. So I thought, okay, this is an existential challenge. We called it really early on. We decided that we wouldn't indulge in magical thinking. We're not going to keep kicking the can down the road and rescheduling the series that we had planned. We're going to flip the switch. And we're not a technology-based organization. So this required everybody to learn different talents, different skills, different programs. And yet we were all beginners, right? There's that, okay, nobody has ever been through anything quite like this or anything like this. And how do we use this as a way to maybe think differently about how we present the arts, think about the sort of excitement of reaching more people, and the challenge of having this very strange dimension of Zoom and computers and TV and all of that as 24/7. So I'm really proud of what our team created, all of the content, the really dynamic relationships that we built.
Yeah.
With a number of patrons through the access. Somebody who might have had to, leave work or leave home at a certain hour to get to something before a performance and get home and drive. They could just, plug in, say hello. We had all these, fantastic webinars and moments with patrons and town halls. And we were able to connect with some of our featured artists a couple days after their shows premiered. So they were relaxed. Everybody had a glass of champagne or seltzer or whatever. And we kicked back with some of our donors in a way that it's very hard to do in a green room after a concert. So I actually loved the informality of it. I loved that we could develop content without requiring that the artists literally, be with us for 4 days, especially if they have a tour or they're traveling, they're away from friends and family.
Yeah.
It was in many ways less challenging for the artists in terms of their travel and schedule, and it allowed many different touch points. Those are things that we will definitely consider.
Oh yeah,
keeping.
Absolutely. Reinventing yourselves. That is your gift. You are gifted at tapping into your creative juices. I like to consider myself as a developer. You come up with the vision, and I can take your vision and I will run with it, and I will pull and do but it's like you have all of the where does that come from? Like what do you tap into? Is it a lot of reading? Is it a lot of movies? Is it a lot of conversations? Is it a mixture? Listening? Where do you go?
Well, it's a mixture. I think this is where the composer side in me comes out. Taking these different components and putting them together in a creative new way. It's how I see these sort of like essences of ideas, and they begin to form an internal logic for me that's sort of unique. I do listen, and I, meander online, and I watch TikTok and all these different, and I do sort of, pop into things, but I also go to, town hall meetings and city hall meetings, and go to a number of civic gatherings through the Federal City Council or Economic Club, because as I hear about initiatives that involve local businesses or schools or community development, or where there are significant uses of city or regional money, I begin to learn a little bit more about the pressures that people are under, where there are sort of nodes of focus that could suggest a creative opportunity. And actually, when I first moved here, I was living in an Airbnb until my family could move from California. And I rented a zip car and drove all around the city every Sunday to different, metro stops. It's like, I don't know, like, where is this? Where is this? So I drove around, think, where could we live? Where could Hallie go to school, our daughter go to school? And on Sundays, in the process of looking at different neighborhoods, I'd just drive, randomly down streets. And it was in the spring, and so doors were open. And I kept hearing all of this music flowing from the churches. And I thought, wow, there is a musical life in Washington, D.C. that I need to get to know better. Yeah. And, that was kind of, as we were talking about in the beginning, if you come in with a fixed mindset, then you look for everything to kind of confirm that mindset. But if you sort of keep everything open, while you have a sense of what you value and what direction you're headed in, then all sorts of things can emerge. And from that little, drive around, came the idea for this arts initiative, the Urban Arts Initiative. Like, how do we foreground local artists in a much more profound and consistent way, not just valuing what comes in and visits and comes to our, the venues, but actually supporting the work of artists who are making their life and work in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And from there, that's what became the Mars Arts DC initiative, because I feel so strongly that, and it goes back again to what we were saying before, that when you can tap into the unique qualities of a community and people who make their lives and work, and understand the challenges, the pressures, the cultural opportunities, and also the people who are the thought leaders and partners who can help you bring more of that, then really exciting things happen. And that the one goal for me was to not have Washington Performing Arts look like another presenter. If you could take us and plop us down in another city, then I would, and it would be the same, then I wouldn't be doing my job.
Goal met. Goal met.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, it has been met, and it continues to elevate itself day in, day out. I am really, it started, like during this whole pandemic, when you decided to do something different with the gala, and it was like, like that was the impetus right there. And then it's just been rolling like a rolling stone, and just getting more and more momentum. And so I'm excited about the things that are to come for the organization. So I'm going to backtrack just a moment, because this is not something you said you wanted to get into. And by the way, I loved the backstage with the patrons.
Oh yeah, because
it's so personable, and I just felt like, what a great way to connect, and we could laugh, like, because when you're in the venue, sometimes it's a little, stush seems to be my word. It doesn't feel like just laid back, and but this was beautiful.
Well, and then there's the curfew, like we have to get out of the hall, everything's being disassembled.
Right.
Pack up.
Right. And out of there. So you started with the music, and you were 3 when you started with the piano, very young. Never wanted to go into performance?
No, I did actually. So I really thought that I was going to be a performer, composer. I graduated early from high school. I was like really keen to get like right into my music studies. And then towards the end of high school, I was at Manhattan School of Music Prep on Saturdays. I was organizing some concerts at my high school, and I was like, this is kind of interesting. And then I did an internship with a local arts presenter, stuffing envelopes and the basic volunteer stuff. I thought, wow, this is interesting. They're putting concerts on, and artists come and go, and you say hello to the patrons. And as soon as I got to college, it became pretty clear that I wanted to make the music happen on stage more than I wanted to be in solitary confinement writing music. And literally from the age of, I would say, 17, I knew that I wanted to be in arts management. It was just 110% clear. But I also had people who said, since you're a music major, like really dig into the music, know your history, know your theory, like, and honestly, having faced the daunting task of filling a blank page with music, or walking out on a stage and being terrified that I was going to mess up. There was a lot of empathy and awareness that came from having been in those settings for the artists that I would present. How can we make people feel comfortable? How can we provide them with a platform to do their best work? How can we bridge and build an interface between the audience and the artist so that there isn't this sort of shock that comes from awareness or preparation, but rather a connection? And what can I do to help make that better? So it really came from a place of love for the field, but recognizing that my role was going to be in something else. That said, I played by ear. I studied composition seriously, but I was always looking at that other, like, how can I make it good for other people, not to do it myself?
What do you say to the young person who is interested in doing what Jenny Bilfield does, and they have vision of running an arts organization? What do you say to them?
Well, it's interesting. We have really fantastic interns, and I often spend some time with them, and they ask that question. And my impulse was to work with small organizations, but to have a leadership role. And I was greatly discouraged choosing that track when I was a young woman starting my career. Many people said, well, you have to choose, either development or PR or programming or marketing. You can't just be on a leadership track. And I was like, well, maybe I can be. I'm not going to lead the New York Philharmonic, but maybe I could, see how all these different things work, because I was interested in how marketing and fundraising and education, how all these things interlaced. So my advice to people who are looking to make their way in this field is, first of all, who you work for and with is paramount. Like, if you can love the organization, but if you hate the people you work for, and you feel oppressed and unappreciated, no mission and activity is going to make that better. But you can work for almost any organization if you love and respect and trust the people who are leading it. So I wish someone had explained that to me, because I didn't get that. I found myself learning a lot about different management styles and whatnot. So that's my first advice. Like, find someone that you really admire and figure out a way to work with them. The second thing is, like, work for an organization where you have a real stake in the outcome, and they have a real stake in your being successful. Because if everybody is rolling up their sleeves and people turn and say, hey, we need someone who can, help with this, like, raise your hand, volunteer, ask questions, and really, like, absorb as much as possible. Because if I'm going to hire someone who has had, one specific stream of experience versus someone who has worked with artists and knows what it's like to manage a budget, and has interfaced with the public, and those skills, those hard skills and those softer skills, in whatever direction someone goes, is going to make them super, I think, super successful. And we're frankly seeing so many more young people entering our field who have really, like, intersectional experience. They've done Peace Corps and painted murals in a town and been part of an infrastructure improvement project, and also studied bassoon, and they played in a youth orchestra, and they speak a couple languages because they had a chance to study abroad. You know, there are like so many different interests that students are combining, and then they come out into the world and they go for a job, and the job's like, well, you know, but we have this department, this department, this department. No, so we have to really begin to create places and roles for the new talent that's coming out, or else they're going to look and say, this is, you know, not for me.
Yeah.
So I encourage young people to look for that opportunity, and that sort of opportunity comes with, I think, many smaller organizations, perhaps more volatile, perhaps less stable.
Yeah.
But you find out what you're made of when you have to go through some of those experiences.
What do you say to the parent who has a child who is very interested in the arts? And I mean, you're speaking firsthand knowledge of this as your daughter is fully immersed into the arts. But, you know, we always get, and I get it too, the parent who wants their child to have a fallback plan, or wants them to have, you know, something else to do outside of the arts. What do you share with them about stability?
Mm-hmm. So I actually did a talk on this, and I have issue, I guess, with fallback plans, because it's often thought of like, okay, we're gonna have that, you know, that fallback plan. What are you? And I think about it as micro goals, because if you're working in the arts and can cultivate a parallel interest in something that will provide you with employment, but let it be driven by interest instead of resignation. It's like, I'm going to do this, but if I can't do that, I guess I'll do that other thing. It's like, okay, but what if you put yourself into things that you truly loved, and you committed to being excellent at them? So for parents, and my parents were Depression era parents, so their view was, okay, it's really great that you want to be a musician, but please have good typing skills so you could get a job on Wall Street and marry an investment banker. So that, you know, obviously none of that.
Right.
But I'm married to a composer. So, but their image was, you know, if you're going to be out on your own, you have to find a way to support yourself. So typing was my way in, but it was also my way into some administrative jobs in the arts, because I could type contracts and I could, you know, do all the secretarial skills. And I had really good secretarial skills. That was sort of my superpower. I did temp jobs and all those things, but I got to do it in an arts organization. And it wasn't a fallback, it was a stepping stone.
Wow.
And, you know, you think of Jake Heggie. Jake Heggie worked in one of the offices at the San Francisco Symphony. And so he met singers all the time. And the singers would say, so what are you writing? You know, if he hadn't been there, the opportunities might have taken longer to come or not come.
Right.
So I really, first of all, I don't think a lot of parents know about arts management. My mother didn't. Like, somebody said, when I started expressing interest in this thing called arts management, she called someone at the American Composers Orchestra in New York, because we used to subscribe to that. And she said, you know, my daughter is talking about arts management and I don't know what to do. And they said, call the American Symphony Orchestra League. They have like a 3-day or 4-day intensive, and she can learn about that. And it blew my mind. I was 18 at the time, 19, and I got to go to this seminar in the summer in Cleveland. And it was like, okay, now I know that there's a career path, and that it isn't, you know, performance or nothing. And my mother like picked up the phone and just called people almost randomly, just asking for advice. I guess that's where I get it from.
I love that you even said that. I don't know if you recognize that's another point to the parents, you know, their interaction with trying to understand what their child wants to get involved in. Because a lot of times it's just plain and simple that they don't know. They don't have enough information about it. And so their first pitch is, you know, well, no, just out of, you know, their own fears and their ignorance into it. So I love that she...
And nobody in my family is musical or artistic. Like, there wasn't any background. I mean, my mother had really wonderful experiences as a child, but she was tone deaf. You know, she played the piano. I played with her mistakes. This wasn't something where anybody had that lineage. But the one thing I have to say that they really instilled in me is that whatever you do it as well as you possibly can. Like, respect the profession, respect the field. They, you know, at whatever aspect of work I did, like, be honorable and do it really well.
Yeah. You know, on Sunday you had put this post up of your Sunday morning music, which
Yes.
is Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, oh yes, Jenny, that's how we start a nice Sunday. Like when I'm cleaning, that's some
Yes.
good music, right? So here, I'm gonna set the scene for you. It's a Friday night. It's raining. You're at home by yourself. I want to know what you're gonna eat, what you're gonna drink, and what kind of music you're gonna listen to.
Okay. So, and I had a little bit of this experience when I lived, on my own for a couple of months, when I started in this job. So it's like, wow, I'm just shopping for myself, what I want to eat. So I think I'll have cooked peeled shrimp, some oysters, a slice of brie, and some scotch. That's what I would do. I would just have like one of those sort of charcuterie plates with and graze, but it would definitely have raw shellfish or cooked.
And what are you listening to?
So, okay. So definitely Earth, Wind, and Fire, Stevie Wonder, because their music was so formative when I was in middle school. Like the sounds of these bands, just like the language and the brass and the incredible vocal range.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I would probably also listen to Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. So that's definitely a guilty pleasure. And
oh, that's funny.
Probably like, about half of The Rite of Spring.
That is funny. No, I'm stuck on Meatloaf.
It's like that, like pedal to the metal.
I love it. What's next on the horizon for you? For you, like, I mean, you do so much organizationally, and do you have some personal goals that you are trying to accomplish as well?
Ah, wow. Well, as you've kind of surmised, I don't really have an off switch, and I haven't had a chance to cultivate a lot of hobbies consistently. Like I have friends who, sing in choirs and studied voice, and they have this wonderful trajectory over time of their growth as artists. And honestly, between my, wonderful family and my work, that's really where my energy is channeled. That said, during the pandemic, I have loved cooking more. That is such a source of joy and fun, cooking and cocktailing. So that's really fun with colleagues and friends. And my husband and daughter and I also own 2 African parrots. They're in their mid-20s. And so we're really interested in aviculture and how, birds' brains develop and language skills and all that. So that's taken on some really kind of hilarious dimension during the pandemic. As the birds become a little bit like us, we become a little bit like the birds. And
they're funny birds. If you all don't ever get an opportunity to watch some of these videos, they have such amazing personalities. It's like these creatures.
They do. Very funny.
They definitely are. And I won't forget the time that one of your birds tore up some books. Just tore.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, we have all of these orchestral scores down at the bottom of the bookshelf. And whenever the African gray gets a little bit quiet, we're like, uh-oh, what's he doing? So he destroyed the bindings of several of our Stravinsky scores. And so another project was to get plexiglass that could be fitted onto all the places that he likes to chew, because they're like 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
That said, whenever we would have a Home Delivery Plus concert, and we'd be watching, that same bird would sit and just watch the concert. He wouldn't attack the other bird. He wouldn't chew on orchestral scores. So even, every creature can be soothed by fabulous music and visuals.
I love it. This is where our time, it always goes by because there's just a rack of other things. I say it all the time that I want to be able to talk about and get into. But the things that I'm walking away with that you said that will resonate with me for now and until it does not, and I don't see how it doesn't, is about having no limits, to be innovative and creative, and having admiration and respect and trust building relationships with people, because that's what really matters, and being authentic in those relationships. People feel these things, and by default, they give into the trust and of someone like yourself or anybody that they meet, and the commitment to excellence. That I can't stress enough. I have a hashtag that is my email, and it says, "Excellence has no excuses."
Yes.
And I fully live by that. Or at least I try to every day that I wake up, to live to that mantra that, Michelle, there are no excuses that you should give or can give. Be excellent no matter what. I'm going to jack it up. I'm going to fall. But Lord, help me not to fall out in the process. And that's what I've loved so much about every aspect in this conversation with you. I love you. I admire you.
I feel the same way about you. You know that.
I thank you. I appreciate
Respect for you. Huge respect.
And thank you for being here. Thank you, Muses, for taking some time out on this Monday evening to join us. And if you missed out, hey, guess what? You can catch us. We'll still be on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming platform. Until then, blessed be. Love to you all.
Love to you.
Thanks.